the city of West Allis's situation with streets that have no sidewalk. There's a number of streets in West Allis that have that situation. This came forward because next year we're proposing to repave South 116th Street over by Washington and Rainbow, and that street has no sidewalks. So seeing that, it led me to basically ask the question, if the city would want to, what's the city's vision or policy or thoughts about including sidewalks on street projects where there's no sidewalk today. I outlined in the letter a lot of math and talking about how it's sidewalks are the safest way to move pedestrians through a city and on a street. There's a lot of vehicles, and it opens up a lot of potential for pedestrian vehicle interaction. Now, I know especially on side streets, there's not a lot of accidents between that, but I think that's because of the slow speed of the cars and the fact that pedestrians are taught very early to watch out for vehicles, and they're good at that. But whether people are good or not good at looking out for vehicles and taking care of themselves, it's better to not have them and put them in that position in the first place. West Allis is very proactive in traffic calming and pedestrian safety. Sidewalks are inherently safest place to be. So in looking at the program, the paving program, I felt it was important to come to the city, the board here, and just ask for direction. And because I think I wouldn't be doing my job as a city engineer if I didn't bring this forward at this time and ask for direction. My recommendation is to include sidewalk on projects where the street doesn't have sidewalk today for the safety of everyone. The special assessment rates that we set include, so like if for a reconstruction project, that rate that is set, which we just reapproved, is the same whether a sidewalk is installed or not installed. So it's not an additional cost above the assessment rate that we're charging already. So it's not like it would increase the cost for any of the projects. That rate is set presuming there would be sidewalk. There could be sidewalk on that project. So another point to consider when considering the installation of sidewalk. So I open it up for questions, comments.
Mr. Chair?
I heard, he's right here and he's telling me, Alderman Spansky first. And then.
Thank you.
So you know where we've got, there's no sidewalks, is that like where there's like that big divot for the drainage? Is that where that happens?
In this case, there's curb and gutter. So it's behind the curb and gutter, and it would happen in what would be the terrace if there was a sidewalk.
Okay.
But there's the property line, which is invisible line, kind of where the right of way ends and the property starts. Between that line and the back of the curb, that's where we would put the sidewalk.
Okay. So if we would come to a point where we're going to replace a street that has that, do we then sidewalk over that and bury that drainage? Is that what we would do for something like that?
We would look at installing curb and gutter and sidewalk in the ditch if it makes sense to do that. So.
Alderperson Grisham?
Thank you. Melinda, thank you so much for bringing this to us. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that most of the property owners that this has been discussed in past.
Sure.
Those that are specific to not having sidewalks oppose sidewalks. Mm-hmm. Most of the reason why they purchase their properties is because of the fact that they have that space and area. I understand where we're going as far as our goal to make a more walkable city, and safety is always of utmost concern. Mm-hmm. That specific stretch that you're speaking about by Washington, that's on the back side of the school?
Is 118th Street
Okay,
So it leads to, the school and, you know, the park is
Okay.
just kinda off to the one side there, but it kinda leads
Right.
right to the school.
has there been any accidents there, pedestrians being hit there that you have in your data?
No,
Okay, because for years upon years, these kids walk to school that route.
Sure.
You know, people take that route.
Mhm.
After the fact of spending this money on the project, and I know you said the assessments don't go up, who pays for that maintenance? There is maintenance, and there will be maintenance in the future.
right, so then the 10-year program, kicks in as
Mhm.
part, you know, so the city has the 10-year program, which sometimes goes longer than 10 years, as you know, but we're trying to stay on the 10-year. That would get incorporated in there. So when we would come, we would look at that area in the 10-year program. If some repairs were needed, that would be, then assessed as everybody else is assessed.
Okay, I have to just state that I would not be willing to tell you to go forward with this unless we had a fair amount of feedback from those that this would impact.
Okay,
So I would recommend that a survey goes out specifically to all of these homeowners, not something that would just be online, that they get to have their voice heard. Because if we say we put it online and we got 40 people that responded, that really isn't proper representation of those that are impacted. And I would not want the backlash after the fact to say, well, we put it out there, nobody responded. So I like the idea of safety. I implore that we look at that. But on these areas, these specific areas, unless there's data that's showing that pedestrians are more at risk or they're not having the ability to access something. And I'm gonna go off track a little bit because I think Chief Pooler came in asking when we were doing the Greenfield project that we put sidewalks next to Greenfield, the golf course. That didn't make sense to me only because there was no accessibility to the park there. You know, golfers aren't going to bring their golf bags and walk up there, dragging their bags. Plus the fact that you're taking a lot of the natural landscape away.
sure, and in that specific case, you know, maybe it doesn't make sense to add it there. I would look at it though, I think it should be examined if we could fit it without taking away that natural landscape. Because I think you and I had a conversation about it, and I drive by there a lot.
Right.
So I see where having that landscape is important to protect from balls going on the street and things like that. I think there would be an opportunity there where we could maybe fit some sidewalk in there, but we'd have to look at it closer. So it's just, and it's whatever direction the city wants to go is fine. We can do it on a case-by-case basis as well. We can bring up, I was just wondering if there was any thoughts to doing it on a more global basis, you know, as a standard for the city, we would propose sidewalks on all streets.
Yeah, and I wouldn't personally support that unless we had data and feedback from those that are paying for it.
Sure. And I
And
also
also
appreciate
future
that.
costs, so, I mean, I think that's fair and reasonable. I don't know how my colleagues feel about it, but that's pretty much my statement.
Sure.
Alderman Stefanski.
Would it be feasible to do letters to each home that's affected by this and say, we need your response?
That's something we could look at doing, and seeing.
Because, I mean, there might be people there that live there that more people want sidewalks than don't. Who knows?
Right. We could do it something more like, on a project-by-project basis and just send out a letter polling the residents of the street. I was just wanted to bring this forward because it was something that I noticed. And it's a very important topic, I know, for the city. I felt it, and sidewalks are the safest way to move people around an area, whether there's accidents or not. It's just inherently safer to get them off the street.
And the only reason I ask is because I've seen other cities, towns, whatever, that have had people hit running, walking, because there are no sidewalks. And so
Yes.
that's, I mean, it's a good thing to think about.
Oh,
But I think it's more, I would rather have more input from the residents that it's gonna affect than us making
right.
a
And
decision ourselves.
the department, we can design the sidewalk in on the projects or not design the sidewalk in on the projects. It's easier to know which direction we're going before we do the design. We pick up the data for that, whether we design the sidewalks in or not. We're gonna survey from right of way to right of way and get all that data. One thing that I've done in the past is, if sidewalks, aren't necessarily, supported by the residents and the common council don't wanna go through that, one economy of scale that we've tried to do is, since we're tearing up the whole road anyway and we're gonna be impacting the terrace anyway, we've gone and graded that and prepared it for sidewalk. So in case, in the future, the city decides it wants to put one in, or the residents come forward and wanna put one in, or there's magic money from the federal government that says, let's put that in, then the residents are prepared. We've even gone as far as putting the sidewalk section across the driveway so that we only booger up the driveway once, we only tear up the driveway once, so that if sidewalks come through or when sidewalks come through, we don't have to tear up somebody's driveway twice, which is a cost savings to them as well. And we're gonna be grading it all anyway, so the little bit of cost to grade it with the whole road is much less impactful than if we came and did just a sidewalk project. So we do some savings on the backside of when that sidewalk project comes forward, then it doesn't cost as much because it's all prepared and basically ready to go. It also helps us clean up the right of way at some point, because a lot of times where you don't have a sidewalk there, people tend to kind of grow into the space that they think is theirs, but it's really not. It's really the city right of way.
So basically, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So basically, if you're regrading that, if there's any brush, anything that would be in that line of sight, that all just gets taken away.
It may get taken away anyway for the road projects, depending on how far we have to go back to grade the curb and gutter and get the correct pitch for the driveways and the curb and gutter. So
Yeah, so
we may be in
what's
there
in
anyway.
place of that then? So you're regrading it, do you seed it and put grass back
We
over
put
it?
sod
Okay.
back in there.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things I was wondering about, we talked about people walking down the street, but you did say that it would help result in some traffic calming, am I correct?
Well,
That's been a big problem lately.
Yes. So, with the sidewalks, we would look at bump outs at intersections, we've done that in a lot of areas to try to narrow that, crossing at the corner so that it's a smaller path to cross. So that's a very, good calming technique in the areas to try to reduce speeding. If it's a longer stretch, we can look at the small traffic circles that we've been doing, like we did on Arthur Avenue and Beecher, the last couple of years, so.
Plus, I've seen lately some areas where they're working on the sidewalk, and I've seen some very scary situations with people walking down the street not realizing that they had to be a little bit more careful with people driving down the street. So when you mentioned that, I kind of remembered this when I was driving myself.
Sure. Yeah, we're always looking at traffic calming opportunities, areas where we have speeding issues. So.
And
Go ahead.
the assessments would stay the same, so could we take the savings from not putting sidewalks in and put it into the 10-year program?
Well, the rate is
Right, the rate, but still the cost of the whole street, the sidewalks would be, just say the sidewalks are $100,000,
Okay.
and we decide not to put sidewalks in, which I'm not a fan of sidewalks,
Okay.
then we could put that somewhere else, that $100,000.
Um,
Again, the assessment's staying the same, what the homeowner pays,
right. The project. So we would bid the project. We would hopefully have an answer on the sidewalk before we bid the project. So, we wouldn't bid out the sidewalk. We would have the answer on whether we were going to design a sidewalk in or not ahead of time.
And then we wouldn't borrow
Right.
additional.
well, that's gonna be a savings without sidewalks, is my point. And, your particular neighborhood you're talking about right now, I was in a meeting and none of them are even here. One was Mike Lewis and one was Gary Barzak. And I don't know what street was going there. They said, we're never gonna have sidewalks in that neighborhood. And I think a lot of people took them at their word on that. Again, I'm not a sidewalk guy. I don't have them in my neighborhood. Everybody loves it. But if you do go with potential future sidewalk, and you're talking about the drive approach, you're gonna have to, or should, cut in that, it's like 10 feet back, that 2 squares of sidewalks, I don't know what that's called.
Yeah.
But I don't see the need for it. I don't
Sure.
see kids getting hit by, probably going to Marley, gets hit by a car. I'm just kidding, but we don't have an overwhelming, we got streetlights. We got streetlights for that. New Berlin, they don't have or they don't have sidewalks. Brookfield doesn't have sidewalks, but they don't have a lot of streetlights either. Not like we do.
Right, and that's where the data in the letter comes in, because in New Berlin, in Brookfield, in Waukesha, the homes are less dense. In West Dallas, in Milwaukee County in general, the homes are much more dense. There's more homes per acre, so you have a lot more vehicles per home, per acre, a lot more trips on the street. So you just have a lot more traffic in the area, which is a different situation and a more dangerous situation for pedestrians to be in the street than on the sidewalk. But again, we can do it on, we can talk about it on a case-by-case basis, or we could do something more global. I just wanted to bring it forward at this time before we got too far down the path and we were designing sidewalks on all streets, and I would rather bring it up for, now at this point, because I seeing how important pedestrian safety is to the city. I wanted to bring it forward at this time and just get some guidance and some direction.
Well,
Before we
I'd
go.
stick with my guidance, my suggestion is to actually talk with those that it's impacting directly, that own those homes
Okay.
and live and play in that neighborhood.
So maybe send a letter out now when we're planning on doing your street, do a little poll of the area right now.
Well, I wouldn't
at this
say
point.
planning on doing the street. Is this something that you're requesting that we as a council kind of proceed, or are you just informing us that you're going to be doing
This street was in the 5-year, in the budget.
And it was the 118th Street one.
Yeah.
On the west side of, is that Walker School in there? Or what?
Yeah, 180 from Rainbow to Washington.
Okay.
So for this one, you just want to know before you bid it out whether it should have sidewalks or not.
Oh wait, 118th.
So we would send the letters.
Right.
So exciting.
And what is the street?
Right.
Give me the street again.
It's 118th from Washington to Rainbow.
Washington is where the school is, right? That
Yeah.
dead ends. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, it's in the.
That's where the guy with the train set lives.
Yes.
I'll be
Yes, it is. He's got train in the public
Right in his
right
front
away.
yard.
Well, some of it's in the right of way. So,
Won't worry about that when
That
we
probably
start
looks
digging.
nicer than the sidewalks.
I'm sorry, what?
I said that looks nicer than the sidewalks would, but, so you're just specifically talking about this 118.
well, I was talking a little globally, but
And that's,
then also.
that's where I was a
but-
little confused on this, so you're asking for direction on 118, or you're asking direction on global, or both?
Both.
I think what I'm hearing is global is not.
But yeah,
Okay.
you don't want to do global.
You want
Right.
to do.
So regardless, the 118 being it was already in the budget, that's approved? Or you're asking us if it
The
should
project
be?
is approved, but she wants to know
Add sidewalks.
if there should be sidewalks when they put the bids out.
Okay.
So I guess what I was hearing was we should survey those neighbors, and anytime we have an area that has no sidewalk, that we would ask the neighbors
Right,
and
we
then
can-
let the council know.
And we can do it just like the guy that we did with the state fair on.
Oh, he paid his own?
80, no, they ramped the
Yes,
curve.
He paid his own.
he paid it for
He
it.
I thought
paid
they
six
did
thousand, no, he
He
paid
paid
$6,000
for it.
some odd dollars to do
But
that.
I think
Good
it,
for him.
it should also be specified that in this project, whether they say they wanted sidewalks or they say, no, we don't want sidewalks, that they're aware that your goal is to regrade that section too, which would take away brush, right, in the row area, because you're right. many people don't realize that past that sidewalk, the city owns quite a bit, more so even on a corner.
Generally about 15 feet behind the
Exactly.
sidewalk.
You know,
right.
so with that being said, I think that would greatly impact their opinions on it and otherwise. So I guess it would be a matter of how it's written up, that they have a very clear understanding what they're saying yes or no to.
Mr. Chair.
And-
And
Yes.
you were providing that as an option, like
Yes.
it's like a in between, either it's yes or no, or we'll put these here for later. So
Great.
Okay.
if we might put those, if we can make it in a simple
Yeah.
Put what here?
manner,
Grading.
Grading.
the grading. So
And
in
that would
the
be the-
case in the future,
That would be the approach cuts too, for the sidewalks already
Yeah.
roughed in.
Yes. so there could be
Three.
three options.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm just wondering the visualization of that, what that looks like.
We can try to draw something up, you know, to include in the letters.
All right.
Kel can do his legalese right,
Okay.
Work something out.
For being one item, we've taken a long time.
I thought I was supposed to stall.
I take some of mine.
You did.
All right, then I'm doing a good job.
So then we then just place
So
this
the
on file?
I think you're looking for a consensus. I think if you're gonna do it street by street and give the homeowner an option, I'm on board with that.
And we can do that. We needed to have the conversation, so I understood where you were.
Okay, but what did you understand we said? That's what I.
What Rebecca
There's
said.
not a global. There's not a global yes or no.
Yes.
There is, as
Street by
these
street.
projects come up that they don't have sidewalks, we will send a survey letter to them with one of three options. Either you
Okay.
don't want it, you are okay with us getting it ready for a sidewalk, but we won't put one in this time, or you're in favor of a sidewalk. And then we will bring that to the council.
And
And
majority
then-
rules.
Yeah.
And that was what I was
Well,
gonna say, if
that's
we
up,
get a
that's
five,
up to, that's
a
up to the
5-5.
council at that
Right,
point.
that's really up to
to
the
be what
council.
their divine vote.
If there's a
Well,
tie,
wouldn't it
he
be
has
for
to
the-
vote.
There's a tie, yes.
Wouldn't it be 50% plus one, right, or half plus?
Well,
Just need one more vote then.
It's still up to the committee and council whether
Yes.
you want us to do it. We can collect the data, unless you wanna say that that's the rule. I mean, there might be some extenuating circumstances in a case that you might not wanna.
Yeah, I'd like to see it
Save.
personally.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should get it, but I still want to, if the majority rules, I'm gonna vote in favor of what the majority of the residents want.
You just never know what.
Somebody
what
might contact you at the last day, they might have been in the hospital
Right.
or on vacation for,
Exactly.
there's lots of different reasons we hear,
Absolutely.
That's
so.
why we keep our phones so ready.
I
Yeah, I
just
have
thought it
no
was
more
a-
questions, thank you.
I just thought it was important to bring it forward now and have that conversation early. So.
So
Thank
now,
you.
so now we vote to place this on file, or?
Just place on file? Okay, is there a motion?
Motion to place on file.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to place on file. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's placed on file.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn, moved and seconded. Any discussion?
No.
Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.
For
Thank
our
you.
audience, all that time we took on one item. Sorry, we haven't even gone to public safety.
Sorry, thank you.
That's
And they,
okay.
and they voted on the budget.
Yeah. Public Safety Committee is called to order. Let the record reflect that all committee members are present with the exception of Alderwoman Ranky, who has been excused. We're going to take item number 19, 2023-0654, new operators license bartender Class D operator application for Russell Warbeck, which is Mr. Russell's second appearances. Thank you for your patience. All right, did I pronounce it
Warbeck,
correctly?
yes, that's correct.
Warbeck, okay. When you're applying for a bartender's license, obviously we get some indication that, you know, what your record is and whatnot, and things may be flagged, so that is why you're here, if you did not know why you were here.
I assumed.
Okay.
Figured as much.
Okay, and looking at your record, there are a couple of things that are concerning that we would like to know a little bit more about, and specific to what type of criteria or rehabilitation you've had to take since that.
Well, I mean, since I was convicted, I served my time finished my probation, did everything the state required of me as far as counseling. During my alcohol assessment, they did not say that I was an alcoholic. I just made a bad decision, which I knew. Since then, I had to work to get my driver's license back as well, which I did. And then it's just a matter of, I don't work and drink when I'm at the bar. So, and I just really don't drink at all anymore.
Okay, good for you.
Once in a while, I will have one, but basically, I don't drink anymore.
And where are you going to be working?
Actually, one of the places you talked about, Nico's, I'll be
Okay.
starting there tomorrow,
Nice.
hopefully if I get approved by you guys, but I'm
Right,
also
they have
currently
great
working
pizza.
at Captain Nick's,
Okay, Captain Nick's
and
as
I
well.
work for the Milwaukee Art Museum for special events and weddings.
Fantastic. All right, I don't have any questions. Do any other committee members have questions? None? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second. Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right, next item is item 20, 2023 new operator's license bartender class D operator application for Kia Payne. Second appearance is Ms. Payne here.
Motion to deny for non-appearance.
And record?
Second.
Would that be non-appearance and record?
Sure.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 21, 2023, 25 new operator's license bartender class D operator for Jesse Bull. Second appearance is Jesse Bull here. Okay, any?
Motion to deny for failure of
Second.
defense.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, and our last item is item 22, 2023-0689, discussion regarding place of last drink data and possible role of public safety committee in that. We have our health commissioner, Bob, here, and I'll let you have the floor.
Very good, thank you.
We got slides.
Yeah, you want to move?
Well,
down?
we'll see.
You can get it to turn on, right?
I had it nice and pulled up.
Is there something that has to be done on the back?
You
of
might
the
have to
page?
press the button. Oh, there it goes. It should be.
There we go.
There you go, there you go.
It's magic.
It's a lovely relationship with technology.
Some guys get all the breaks.
There we go. All right, thank you for having me, Bob Leishel, City of West Dallas Health Commissioner. And as it's noted on the agenda, really, what I would really just want to do tonight is have a basic introductory course, provide a little bit of education to you folks on what place of last drink is. And then, in particular, have a conversation, if you're interested, in the role, potential role of the PSC, moving forward. And Alderwoman Grisham and I have had a little bit of a conversation previously to this point, and Kayla and I have communicated on this, and so I will launch into the presentation to the point where Kayla will talk a little bit about the legal aspects of it, but then I think help to kind of frame what potential opportunities exist for this committee to play a role. So with that, I will jump in. So place of last drink, or otherwise POLD. So place of last drink is really just a strategy, bottom line, to really monitor and really look at ways that we can strategize around really establishments where we have identified over-serving of alcohol. As the second sentence there indicates, it is the last place that a person drank alcohol before being issued a citation by a law enforcement officer for an alcohol-related incident. The collected information helps to identify alcohol on-premises establishments that have a pattern of over-serving. And since many arrested for operating while intoxicated came from licensed premises, reducing over-serving at establishments licensed to serve alcohol on premises could substantially reduce drunk driving and other harms caused by excessive alcohol use. So I even consider collecting this place of last drink data. What the research is telling us, and I have to give recognition to the Medical College of Wisconsin, where most of this information came from, it is an effective, low-cost method to identify local licensees that demonstrate a pattern of over-serving alcohol to its customers. Knowing which licensees consistently serve alcohol to intoxicated customers allows communities to focus resources on establishments with a documented over-serving problem. And then when we see patterns of over-serving are identified, licensees and local resources can work together to reduce over-serving without imposing extra restrictions on compliant licensees. So this becomes a data-driven approach to a problem. So another reason why this is even being addressed, we're looking at this as another tool in the toolbox, as a way to support our ongoing efforts citywide to address reckless driving within the city. So who's collecting this place of last drink data? Local law enforcement. In fact, Chief Mitchell is here as well, and he and I have talked about this as an opportunity, and I certainly won't speak on the Chief's behalf, other than just to say that they actually have begun to collect place of last drink data when they are pulling folks over, or when they are actually interacting with someone who has had an OWI. So we have already begun to collect some of this data. Data then is shared with prevention professionals such as public health, it could be human services, and community coalitions. So as I mentioned a little while ago, really the strategies behind this speak to data-driven decision making. In our case, we have, as part of one of our community health improvement plan strategies, an action team that is made up of community members looking specifically at substance use, to include alcohol, vaping, but as well looking at specifically place of last drink as a strategy. So then how should the place of last drink data be used? We're just getting into a repetitive pattern here, but as we see establishments, that are named during the course of a stop, then that begins to generate a database where we can identify pretty quickly establishments that are becoming known over-servers. Another way that the data can be used is by local law enforcement, other local partners, to initiate remediation efforts. So in this case, we're talking potentially about education or training with the over-serving licensee. So in some respects, that's kind of considered maybe a first step in the process, as we identify establishments that are becoming known as frequent flyers. And if the licensee does not cooperate to reduce its over-serving pattern, data can be shared with the licensing authorities. So in this case, the idea would be potentially this committee to explore or consider a little bit more aggressive enforcement actions. And that's all I got. I mean, that's the base framework of what place of last drink is in terms of kind of the background. Cale, do you want to jump in at this point?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. As you saw in the presentation, the explanation of what this program would accomplish is pretty clear. Police officers encounter intoxicated people in the public, whether they're driving and walking on the sidewalk, wherever it may be, and they get the data on where did you get your last drink. By law, under Chapter 125, licensees are not allowed to serve intoxicated persons. That's something that is a violation of that chapter. It can result in discipline on their license. There's also a part saying you can actually revoke a license or suspended for serving. The term in the statutes is known habitual drunkards. It's a very old sounding phrase, but it's out there. Yeah. So, but it's in there. So the idea is, if a pattern emerges that a licensee is serving the same people who come in contact with police because they can't take care of themselves, what do you do with that information? And that's where I come in. There's a lot of options on how you handle that. If those patterns emerge, should that information come directly to this committee? Should it go to a different body? And what are the consequences of each? If that information is delivered directly to this body, that a particular licensee has overserved a number of times, I do have a concern that that would force you to prejudge it. That would give you information outside of a hearing that then would preclude you from taking disciplinary action against that particular licensee. If that's the way the committee wants to proceed, that's fine. Nothing stops you from doing that, but you should know that that's going to be information you would not be able to use in the future during a disciplinary hearing. The other alternative might be referring this information to another city body that is not the council, and they could take the initial steps of education or training or being aware of it or data keeping, things like that. And then if that body found that there was enforcement action potentially necessary, they could make a referral to this body in the formal manner that would allow you to handle it so that it's not going to affect whatever outcome the committee ends up going with. So one example, obviously it's coming from the health department. We have a board of health. That might be an interesting place to refer this information to as a first stop. They could even call the licensee in and request a discussion with the licensee, and as long as the two members of the council who are on the board of health are not involved in that discussion, which is other persons Turner and Renke, if they're not involved in that discussion, then there's no problem with the council proceeding with discipline later for the exact same issues should that behavior continue with the licensee. So it could be as simple as those two other persons excusing themselves to that topic, maybe create a subcommittee in the Board of Health that handles this with the 5 other members. A lot of options. But that would be one way of sort of balancing the interest of taking the data that police and health obtain, using it in a functional way, but not foregoing the opportunity to maybe do something later if it still is a problem. Any questions on it? Happy to answer. Yes? Or,
Kale?
Go ahead.
sure.
Thank you. Kale, I have a question as far as, would this be something that could be proven if somebody says, okay, hey, I was at so-and-so's bar, isn't that hearsay?
Well,
How do you prove that? It could be somebody who said, I was there or I wasn't there, but they had a, little gripe with somebody. Those were the things that I'm thinking of that it might set an establishment up for failure, especially if it becomes known to the community.
I'll try not to get too technical with it, but hearsay is allowed in hearings before this committee. It goes to the weight of the evidence, not its admissibility, meaning if you don't believe the person, then that's something you are free to do. And it could be because they were intoxicated at the time they said it. The witnesses that would come in to talk about this information would also be important. So if the only thing the city can present to you is one officer just summarizing what 3 intoxicated people said over the last 3 months, you might just not find that to be credible enough information to suspend the license.
Okay.
So it goes to the weight of the evidence, and that's the thing that you would consider during your deliberations.
Okay, thank you. And another question that I had, and it's on a broader scale, we're looking at just what's in our purview as far as over-serving in establishments, and that's what our committee's for. But on a broader topic for public health, I'm sure, Bob, this can also, if there's data-driven type of things like this for point of last drink, that can be related to domestic violence, to mental health issues, to other things that maybe potentially opens up more services that we can help with. I'm just,
Yeah, I guess, we're,
or are we just sticking to this window that we're just looking at?
right
the
now, we're
food
just
service?
looking strictly at this particular opportunity based on the naming of an establishment.
Okay.
To your point, yeah, I guess in theory, yeah. I mean, when you start looking at risk factors, right, then we can begin to kind of explore the broader horizons.
Okay.
But for
And-
now, it's just this.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Stefanski and then Alderwoman Keene.
So how is this any different, the data and the stuff that we would see, any different from when we have a bar or establishment that has to come in front of us and we get all that evidence there, how's that different from it?
You mean the summaries that you
Yeah.
received?
Because you said we can't see it because we prejudge. How's that any different from what we get currently?
So the idea would be that you're receiving a police filtered report that you are to take as basically a summary of information rather than direct evidence of it. And so just like a judge that hears a preliminary hearing, for example, gets to hear a little bit of evidence or the general accusations from the prosecution and decide it's worth listening to more. That's where that level of the reporting comes to you from. So it's just a summary of here are the things that happened according to the police, but that's stuff that would never be considered. It's not the direct evidence necessarily. There's going to be a separate complaint filed using witness names and being more detailed in describing how it happened. The concern here is that you'd just be given information with one name of one licensee saying this bar is our top over-server. That would be sufficient enough where it's the issues. I think you'd prejudge the case, and it'd be more difficult to defend a decision from the committee if you did that, as opposed to just a list of the 13 things that happened this week.
Okay. I'm still not sold on that one because we still see the stuff that happens at an establishment and get told, okay, this will, now we have a choice to subpoena them and bring them in for questioning and stuff like that. So that I'm just trying to figure out how that's different from what we do now.
Are you speaking specifically to the tavern reports?
Yeah, you know, we
Okay.
get the tavern report, we get, then we dictate or determine that one is gonna come in and have a hearing, and they have to come in and say guilty or not guilty, and then we go from there. How is this any different from that type of procedure?
If you are a risk-averse group, I would recommend not receiving those reports any further, because you're right. Someone could make that argument in the future. I've mentioned that in the past, and the committee has chosen to continue to receive the reports. So, because of that reason, I just make sure that those reports are based chronologically. Everything's just summarized by a police officer and handed to the committee, and there's no specific information saying this is the one that we need to go after. And as you can tell, generally it's our office that makes that decision as to who's going to be filed, who complaints to be filed against, in consultation with the police department. So we don't really consult the committee as to when those complaints come forward. They're just presented to the committee, and that's the important part. Is we wouldn't want an alderperson doing that. In fact, I've had discussions with some members of the board, of the committee, that have said, I'm interested in this particular licensee, and I say, because you have shown that particular interest now, I would advise that you don't participate in the proceedings.
So I don't have a problem with not getting the tavern reports then anymore if that's the case. If it's gonna be determined by somebody else prior that there's a problem at this establishment, we need to bring them in.
I would have no problem with that, and it would only strengthen the city's case if prosecution is necessary later. But again, it's up to the committee. If you want to keep receiving them, we've tried our best to balance it so that you get only tidbits of information, just kind of general information, as opposed to specific allegations of date, time, location, witnesses, and trying to prove up the case ahead of time. So cutting those reports out would be just fine by me.
Well, and I have a thought on that, but I'm gonna let Alderwoman Keane go.
So I have kind of a statement and then a question. I have held a West Dallas bartending license for 19 years. I have bartended at, name it, and I've probably been behind the pine. Having this is not very clear. I have had customers walk in, totally fine, sit down, use the bathroom, doing who knows what. I have served one beer, come back, and is a hot mess. I throw them out of my bar. I am point of last contact. You have a lightweight who's finally come out and has a double and a shot. That's not over .08. I would not have served them if it would have been. But 5 minutes later, they're flipping off their bar stool. And this happens a lot. To be able to determine that, do I believe that there are bartenders out there completely over-serving? Yes. Do I agree that over-serving generally leads to somewhat not having a handle on your bar of your patrons? You're probably going to have an establishment that has more fights, that has more items going on because you don't have a grip on it. But point of last sale,
could mean there are so many variables that you can't take into consideration. Even to the fact of you have a back room, someone's playing pool, you have someone come up completely sober, orders 2 shots. They're serving it to the person in the back room. Do you have to keep an eye on it? Yes. Could that person be to a point of limit before you have realized it because you have not handed it to them? Yes. So there's so many variables into this that I'm not saying necessarily it's the worst thing, because I think it helps bring awareness to bartenders that this could be an issue, but I would be curious to know, what is considered a pattern? When is it that you bring them in, that you say enough is enough? When are certain circumstances not considered? Because you have the person that you literally gave 1 beer to, they went in the bathroom and did who knows what. And now you're telling them to leave your establishment so they don't start a fight, so they don't do anything, but you're turning them over into the public. They get pulled over, is it then on that bartender who gave the last, and now their name's written down, they're then being scrutinized for it. So it's not so cut and dry that when you bartend, that even someone's drunk, you have the quiet guy that comes in, he's had 3 beers. You don't realize that he can't handle those 3 beers until he gets up to use the bathroom. And now you're going, aw, shit. So
You're gonna have to delay that.
Actually, it's allowed on TV after 8 o'clock.
We're all beeping.
So I just, like I said, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to hold bartenders accountable for maintaining their crowd and for not over serving, because that's how you avoid issues of fights and shootings. But I don't think it's as cut as dry as this was the last place you were, this is who's on it.
Appreciating that. One thing that we would have to discuss and talk about is a potential next step is what is the criteria that essentially would escalate, to the point of getting a letter or some kind of follow-up. So there's general recommendations of 3 to 5 named instances when they're being pulled over or whenever they're stopped, and so it isn't a one and done.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that threshold is would, I think, help determine what the course of action would be.
Okay.
Mm.
Are you finished? If I could just circle back real quick to what you had said, Alderman Stefanski, I believe it's very important that we still receive our tavern reports. They are watered down. We're not getting specific information that I feel would impede our ability to make a determination. Right now, the West Dallas PD is the one that brings the summons and complaints to us. So with the exception of not being in the know, I think it's important that we, as representatives of public safety, that we are aware if there's a shooting, or we are aware if there is tickets issued for serving to minors. That doesn't give me any judgment on an establishment, because I haven't heard the details of it or otherwise. That's my personal opinion. And I think with the top-notch representation we have in the city, I have yet to see that anybody with a summons and complaint come forward saying, okay, we're going to get out of this. I think you guys do a really great job. So I would not be in support of Xing the tavern reports. So I just wanted to
I
go
would
back to
base
that.
it on what our attorney's saying, that's why.
Oh, absolutely. I just wanted to circle back and let you know what my thoughts are. We already have a lot of limited information altogether, as it should be with some things, but that's part of our role, and I think we should keep that. Alderman Weigel?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So, 41 years behind the bar. This conversation's been had by the Tavern League and other people. When you get pulled over by the police, they give you a sobriety test to determine if you're impaired. Okay. A customer comes into a bar, sometimes all they say is, I'll have a tap of light. Okay. And you don't know if they had a good night's sleep, if they had an empty stomach, if they're taking other meds, if this is their first beer or their 10th beer. But they say, I'll have a tap of light, and you're supposed to make some sort of determination. And as Alderperson Keene said, yeah, sometimes the guy sits down and has a beer and you don't realize that you maybe shouldn't have served him, and then you do the right thing. And now he's had his last beer, you're the point of last drink. A couple of other things. What happens when number one on the list for the first week of July is Summerfest? Okay, or the Cubs are in town, and then, yeah, where'd you get your last drink? It's, oh, in Penn Field. You know, how do we deal with that? We take into consideration that there are some very high volume venues that will, you know, now clearly if it's a little corner place, and I won't pick on anybody, and if they're on the top of the list, well, then you can see there's a problem. But I think there's a lot of other things to consider here. It's like the amount of product that this venue is going through, this licensee is going through. And then my other question that I'd ask often when we look at a policy or a procedure change is, what are our other communities doing? Is this the kind of thing that we're on the bleeding edge on, and we're gonna sort out the problems of it? Or is there somebody else doing this and has been doing it for a year or longer successfully, and they've had real gains? And I'm not talking about, I'd like to see a city comparable to us. I don't know if it's, you know, maybe, I wouldn't say Maple Bluff in Dane County, I don't think that would be comparable, you know. But if you see what I'm saying, I don't like us, I like our old city saying, city to center. I like it when we adopt things that are proven to work. I appreciate the outside of the box thinking on this and trying to be proactive, but I think that there's a lot of ways this could go sideways. And if it's going on somewhere else, I'd be glad to hear about it, but I don't, is it? Bob, is it?
Rock County, I believe, I'd have to verify, but I believe Rock County has a plexiglass.
So it's a county-wide initiative, and just for every identification, Rock County's county seat is.
Is that Janesville?
Jefferson,
Yeah.
Fort Atkinson, is that area?
No,
Beloit?
that's Beloit.
Beloit,
Janesville.
okay.
Beloit, Janesville.
Just curious, yeah.
Yeah, so there is not a plethora of municipalities that are implementing this right now. I think in large part, based on my really just reading and understanding of the topic itself, it's because it has policy implications, and anytime we start talking about policy implications, then it becomes more of a challenge.
And I understand we live in the information age. We should be gathering information on all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But, and using it.
Yeah.
But like I said, I don't know if we're gonna, I mean, like, Kale can answer whether we're opening a, like you said, you're picking on me just because I've had a bunch of, whether it was a big place, high volume. I'm gonna guess maybe Paulie's is probably one of our higher volume bars compared to,
I'm sorry, we weren't supposed to mention ours.
I'm not saying he has a problem, I'm just saying that just by the nature of the fact that he has probably more customers than most other bars in
Right.
the city, that he may end up on the top of the list,
The only thing I was wondering about, though, the whole thing is, like you said, it's a pattern. If you know that every Thursday night when Fred's working, people know to come there because Fred's gonna keep
Fred's
serving
works
you.
doubles for free.
He's gonna keep serving you. After a while, using this information, you know that every Thursday night, they're picking up so many people from this particular bar. I think it's a good thing, to have a pattern looking at it. Because, like you said, the thing about come in for a light, how often is that gonna happen? But how often, yeah.
More than you think.
When the bus comes from the Brewer game,
Uh-huh.
and people have been sitting in the stands for, well, it's not 3.5 hours anymore because they have new rules. But, and the bus unloads, and everybody walks in, and the bartender's busy, or it's a pitcher,
Yeah.
somebody gets one pitcher, and he's the sober guy, but his buddy drinking it with him polishes off most of it.
Or it's a bar up the block from Rogers, and it's the first place they stop.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
So the discussion tonight is exactly also, I think it'd be beneficial to have a different body review prior to this committee seeing it,
Yeah.
is because all the context information could be more thoroughly reviewed by a group that doesn't really have a punitive interest. And if it's just a few happenstances got you unfortunately to the top of the list, well then nothing happens. But as a licensee, I'm assuming you would still want to know about this instance and and if any action could be taken to correct it, we can do so. But if it just happens to be bad luck, then so be it, and we'll move on anyway. So I think it is important to have one more body in between this body that receives information for that and for the other purposes I mentioned.
Madam
Thank
Chair.
you. If I may just say one thing relative to that and circling back to you, Bob, and your department. Say if that is something that we would say, let's go forward with, we're creating more government unless we're looking at this board, and boards are just appointed citizens that are in the community, that are just as familiar as you and I would be, being we live here, and could have it. I think it would be problematic. I think it's adding a lot more, and I guess that's my question. How much more is this gonna add to your staff, to your department, and work-wise? And what data is proven, I guess, when Marty, or Alderman Weigel had said, what are we getting, what benefit are we truly gonna get out for the bang for our buck if we're just putting more restrictions or more government there to scrutinize
Yeah, so again,
or take data?
this is an aspect of part of our community health improvement plan. So we already have resources allocated, through action teams. So I think the degree of involvement is just going to boil down to that threshold that I referenced, and I think some of you are also kind of getting at what point, based on the data collected, would we take action? We don't know to know. I can tell you that, based on the data that I've seen so far for this year of OWIs, you're looking at, you're in the hundreds already this year. And the place of last ring data that's been collected so far by PD, the numbers are very few in terms of named establishments. We are beginning to see some trends that I can share, but I think, with that in mind, because of the numbers that we're looking at are not significant in terms of identifying establishments, it's not going to take a whole lot of extra time. This is built into what we already do as part of our job. I think it's then the question of how much further do we want to go beyond what the health department and our partners would do to potentially escalate this and have a more direct conversation with people who are identified or establishments that are identified as over-serving. So I guess to answer the question, it would, from a health department perspective, it would take a lot additional time and energy to do this because it's already part of something that we're doing.
Okay, and kind of going back to it being just OWI traffic violations, what about when our officers are showing up and there's fights at the bars and whatnot? That's the point of the tavern reports. Is there any way that, I guess I'm trying to get my train of thought here. I guess I just don't know enough about this to say it would be beneficial to put that effort in if we're already getting data through the West Allis PD. And truth be told, they're the ones who are bringing the tavern reports to the committee. They're the ones who do summons and complaints. Can we approach this on any other level of education to our establishments or our bartenders? I mean, I know they have to take their tests and whatnot, and it covers over-serving because I had to do that when I worked at the Bradley Center.
So, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, is there a reason that we can't handle it the way we handle the tavern reports and the police putting in a complaint or the attorneys noticing that this is a problem instead of creating a whole nother layer?
So, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
So the idea would be the police department can ask these questions without any council approval. Health can collect the data without any council approval. The question really for the committee today is, do you want us to make a formal referral process? And what should that look like? So if the idea is, let's not have a formal process, let's just let the health department work administratively behind the scenes, and if a problem emerges, they'll do their work, and if they believe there's enough information, they'll work with the police department and talk to our office, and a complaint will come forward. That's one way to do it as well without any formal program in place. I think the request tonight was, do you want a formal program?
Yeah, and that clears up, because I was gonna go back to that with you too. Why aren't we just following that same protocol that you already are? Tavern reports come through, goes to the city attorney decides, hey, this might be a summons and complaint that we need to bring forward, and go that way. And you could do the same thing with the data. I don't have any, I guess, problem with the data being collected if it's already being collected. They're just, I don't think it does need another layer in subcommittee.
And I don't know if in those cases additional information could be collected, where if there is a problem, you might want to go to that establishment and gather data that's non-disputable.
And that could be, you know, one strategy too, is referenced, is the first blush of follow-up would be that educational outreach, just to, you know, let the establishment know that they've been identified, health department and or, you know, police, you know, reach out to them directly and just attempt in a softer manner to, you know, encourage compliance, that they don't overserve. And then again, if that doesn't go anywhere and, you know, we continue to collect data, i.e., you know, PD collects the data, then maybe that's a more escalated, you know, approach in terms of, you know, what that means for this potential, you know, committee and the council.
I think that makes much more sense, and that way we're not identified. That data's not brought to us until it is identified within the other departments to say, okay, this might be a problem. I think that's a really good approach and would be more effective. Alderman Weigel.
Oh, yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm going to agree with what Bob is saying about maybe the health department reach out. Maybe not even a person in enforcement, because as a licensee, you don't know when your customers get pulled over for drunk driving. And if you are one of these problem establishments, you may not even know it, because Fred might be working Thursdays and the owner doesn't know this is going on. And from it going from that to you being number one at the list, and next thing you know, you're brought in here about a problem that the owner didn't even know was happening.
Right.
When there's a fight in a bar, when there's gunshots, when there's a drug thing in a bar, obviously the owner, I mean, pretty sure the owner knows about all
Hope
those. But these would be things going on related to the bar that actually occur outside of the bar, and we want to hold the bar responsible for it. And there's no way that owner could know that unless we reached out to them and said, hey, you know, we noticed a trend here that on Thursdays when Fred's working, we get rid of you guys.
I really want to put Fred land yourself. I apologize. Anybody named Fred?
I assume that Alderman Turner's got some information on that.
So,
I think the outreach would be important rather than going straight to enforcement.
I agree. Thank you.
So-
Attorney Decker?
just hearing from the committee and everyone else, to summarize, I assume you don't want us to bring evidence of smoke. You'd rather wait to see the fire.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll
Okay.
try to find out where the fire source is.
One of the things,
Try to put the fire out.
loop back to your tavern report thing. Is there something you want to keep out of the tavern report that would make the case for the city better? That would still give us information that we would need to determine whether they come here.
In general, omit names from the
Besides
report.
Fred.
Include Fred, I
It's gonna be
guess.
Fred from
Fred is-
now on.
Everybody's gonna be Fred.
Fred's got some issues.
That's my dog's name, okay?
I'm gonna have a discussion about this at another
We
meeting.
Yeah,
can
I
send a
think so,
schedule
since
for another
it's not
topic if
on
you'd
the
like.
agenda. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so any other discussion, questions? Bob, I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we need to make a motion on this?
No, unless you wanted to do
It
something
was just a
about it.
discussion, so,
Okay.
all right, thank you very much.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.